In this tutorial, we are going to go over camera settings and saving views. So to start, I make sure that I'm in the perspective view, and in the command line, I type camera. Then I select show to show the camera for my perspective view. Now you can see the location of the camera in all the other views. So for example, if I select this point that basically represents my camera location and move it, I can see how my view is changing in the perspective views. So as I mentioned, by moving this point, I move my camera location. By moving this point, I can just move the whole camera widget. This point here, which is basically the center of this rectangle, shows my target location. So when I move it, I'm basically moving my target. This other point here basically tilts my camera. And this point takes care of the lens angle or my focal length. To get rid of my camera view, I can go back to perspective view and type camera again and select hide. Before continuing with this tutorial, I need to mention that if you are in another view, for example, in the top view, and you run the camera command, basically you're showing the camera that is taking care of or controlling this view. So you can see this camera here in the perspective view and also in the other views. And unfortunately, it's very easy to sort of mess up this view. So for example, I can just go here and basically ruin my top view and make it a perspective or a parallel view. If this happens, you could just go here. So I don't think it's going to show this part in the tutorial, but what I'm doing is that I'm using this drop down next to my view name, so next to this word top here, and then I go to set view and select top. So now everything goes back to normal and how it should be. Okay, so now I just type camera again to hide the camera for the top view. I just showed this to let you guys know that it is important to be in the perspective view when you're dealing with the camera. So again, I go back here in the perspective view, I type camera and then show to show the camera for this view. All right. So you can see here, when you go to the perspective view, you can see here the camera location and the target location. So basically you could either type where you want your camera and target to be, or you could select this place button here to place it manually on a point that you want to put your camera or target on. So before going ahead, I'm just going to make a opening on this wall here. So I draw a rectangle, then I move it to the middle of that wall, and I select or type the make hole command. Select this curve that I want to use to create a hole, and then select my poly surface that I want to make this hole in. Okay, and then I can go to the top view to make sure that I'm also cutting this back wall here. So I make sure that I'm going all the way through. So you can see how I have created this door here, right? And then I'm just going to select and make a line between these 2 points in my door. And now I go back to placing my camera. So when I'm in the perspective view, I can type 0, 0, and maybe 6 for 6 feet for the human height to place my camera. And then I'm going to also figure out where I want to put my target, the target of my camera. So to do that, I want to put my target in the middle of this opening. So I just select place, and I choose the midpoint of this line. And you can see that since I moved my camera to find this point, now my camera is not at 0, 0, and 6 anymore. So I'm going to type 0, 0, and 6. And you can see that now basically I'm standing in the middle here, and I'm looking at the middle of my door. But since I'm not really seeing much, I can change my focal length. So you can take a look here what happens when I change my focal length. So right now it's very big. For a normal perspective view, I select the focal length between 35 to 50. So I'm going to start with 50. I can see that still I don't really see much. Now I change it to 35. So also take a look at this top view to see how this is changing. So I type 35, and you can see that now I can have a bigger field of view. So this focal length, or the angle of the view, is basically how much of the scene we are capturing. Okay. I can also type lower numbers to see more of my space. For example, I can just type 15. even though it captures more space, I need to mention that normal perspectives, or for creating normal perspectives, you basically need to type in numbers between 35 to 50, because this is not how a human being sees the space. So you could really exaggerate it and put 5, and as you know, this space is not really this big. So this is just very exaggerated and it's not true to reality. So I go back and type 35. Okay. Once we're here, if I move around, I'm going to basically move the location of my camera. In order to look around but not change the location of the camera, I can hold down Control Alt and right click in my mouse and just look around. Okay, so if you look at the top view, you can see that the location of my camera is not moving, but I'm just looking around. This is very useful for renderings, because you can go inside your space, and once you're at the location that you like, you could just hold down Control Alt and right click and just look around instead of just moving the whole camera. By now you should have noticed how easy it is to change my camera location. So for example, I can spend minutes to find the perfect location that I want to do a rendering in, and then suddenly with one move I can just mess up the view. So it's very useful to be able to save a view that I like. So if I go out of it, so for example, if I'm doing a rendering and I want to just move around and change materials, I can later on go back to that view and continue working, instead of having to again spend a few minutes to find that perfect view. Okay, so to do so, let's say this view is the view that I like. I want to be able to go back to it. To do so, I go here. Again, you want to be able to see this in the recording, but here next to perspective, I select this triangle, so make the drop down visible, and then I go to set view, and then I go to named views, then I click on save as and give my view a name. So I'm going to type interior 1. Right, so now if I just zoom out, let's say I want to, for example, change the material of this part or change my 3D geometry, and now that I'm done, I want to go back to that view. I go here, click on the drop down again, go to set view, and select that view that I saved, so interior 1, and go back to that view. So now going back to my clipping planes, which I had hidden before, I'm going to just type show here in the command line to have them be shown again. I'm going to select them, then I select the interior one, which is basically my perspective view, so I can see them here. And now let's say I like this view, I just go set this view, name it. I'm going to just give it a name. Then I can make a 2D drawing from this view, then go back to my 2D drawing, fix it, take it to Illustrator, and so on. And then when I want to do my V-Ray rendering, I can just go back to the same view and do a rendering on the same view, and then later on I could just combine the two drawings, the rendered view and the 2D drawing, and take them to Illustrator to put them on top of each other.